Today we're going to talk about Dublin City Council, also known as DCC. Unbelievably, the most important organisation in your life when it comes to your day-to-day lived experience in this city. The first thing to know about DCC is that it is absolutely enormous. It employs over 6,000 people, has an annual operating budget of €1.5 billion and a 3-year capital budget of over €4 billion. If we compare this to a private company, it's about the same size as Apple, Pfizer or Google in terms of how many people it employs in Ireland. Any organisation of this size is really important to the state, and DCC is no exception. It covers almost everything you can think of across waste management, parks, roads, transport, economic development, housing, homelessness, planning, events, culture, the arts, sports, libraries, the fire brigade, animal welfare, community development, traffic, rents, rates, and much, much more. Now, I know that's a lot to take in, but thankfully the good people of DCC have structured all of this into a more manageable format of 5 central departments that all of these areas roll up into. The first is HR and transformation, the second is planning, development and CRES, the third is finance, the fourth is environment and transportation, and the fifth is housing and community. We will touch on each of these in more detail throughout the series, but for today, we're just going to give a more general overview of DCC. So when I joined the council, I was completely overwhelmed by the size and scale of it. But as part of our onboarding pack, they gave us an organisation chart of the key people and their roles within the council. And normally, when you start a new job, you try to meet as many people as possible to get an understanding of how things work and what's really going on behind the scenes. So I thought it would be a good idea to do the same for the council. And over the past 6 months, I've met with almost every single individual on this chart, some of them multiple times. And the idea was to find out what they were working on, what they were trying to achieve, where they were blocked, and where councillors could help and support if appropriate. Now, it's important to say here that before I joined the council, I genuinely thought that DCC was some sort of failed organisation that did not care about the city. I couldn't have been more wrong. From meeting these people one-on-one, I now know that DCC is full of smart, passionate people who care deeply about their role, the city council, and the city. But at the same time, like any large organisation, there are a lot of things that DCC could be doing better. And the systems and processes that are in place at the moment to deliver the core services aren't working as well as they should in certain areas. An example of the good and the not so good within DCC can be found in the Parks Department. Dublin has amazing parks, Stephen's Green, Merrion Square and Ringsend Park, to name just a few. There are about 66 in total, and these are generally really well maintained by the council staff and are fantastic places within our communities that we should continue to celebrate and invest in. And then at the other end of the spectrum, we have Portobello Park. This is a prime piece of land in the city centre that was first marked for redevelopment all the way back in 2021. 4 years later, and it just got greenlit by the council last October, with an anticipated completion date of 2026. Now, it is completely unacceptable that it takes DCC over 5 years to deliver a small park in the city centre. So, Parks is doing a lot of things really well and other things not so well. And examples like these can be found all across the council within each department. But taking a step back and looking at DCC as an organisation, there are 4 main factors that come into play in terms of how effectively it can operate. The first is government regulation, the second is funding, third is councillors, and fourth is culture. We'll briefly talk about the first 3 today and come back and do a separate episode on culture, because it's really important that we're very fair and thoughtful on this topic. Starting with government regulation, there has been a systematic disempowering of local government within this country over the past few decades, and it accelerated in 2014 with the passing of the Local Government Reform Act. Ireland now has the 3rd weakest local government in Europe, just ahead of Hungary and Moldova. And I know that mightn't mean anything, but basically it's not good. We will come back and do a whole episode on local government, how it's structured and how it's funded in the future. But for today, all we need to know is that DCC is hamstrung a lot of the time by central government in delivering its core services and investing into the future of the city. In relation to funding, DCC is dependent on central government just to keep the lights on. DCC raises about €900 million per annum from rates, rents and other services, but that €600 million gap gets filled by government each year. Now, your first instinct might be to say, wow, how generous. But the reality is that a lot of these funding streams were taken away from the council in the first place and are now given back to us with more conditions and bureaucracy attached. And lastly, councillors have a key role to play here in terms of how effectively the council operates. We don't always make it easy for the executive, and they don't make it easy for us. but it's a fraught relationship that isn't always based on mutual respect, and it doesn't work so well right now. So, the big three takeaways. Firstly, DCC is a massive organization on par with some of the largest companies in this state. Secondly, it's doing some things really, really well and other things not so well. And thirdly, government regulation and funding obstacles means that DCC is fighting with two hands tied behind its back when it comes to delivering for this city. Now, my hope is that this episode has served as some sort of foundation for how we should think about DCC throughout the series, and we'll come back and get into the weeds on each of the departments that we've mentioned. The next episode will be out next month, where we'll talk about councillors and discuss what we actually do.